Welcome to Aspirations Over Hesitations, the podcast for high-achieving women whose ambitions are bigger than their fears. I'm your host, Alli Eldridge. As a mom, wife, and Fortune 500 company retiree, I know what it's like to wear many hats while still wanting more out of life. Whether it's stepping off the corporate ladder to lean into motherhood, healing yourself from chronic health issues to bring home that miracle baby, or launching your own business, you'll be inspired by stories of women who are going for the big things in life, in spite of anxiety that they too have experienced. Here, you'll find a community of moms who can relate to wanting what others say is impossible. They embrace alternative ways of thinking, working, and being, even when it comes with some uncertainty. One thing's for sure. If you want to live an unconventional, extraordinary life full of freedom and flexibility, you have to be willing to do things a little differently. Are you ready to say yes to choosing your aspirations over hesitations? Let's jump in. Today, I'm here with Cortney Kante, a mom who left a full-time job with great benefits and financial security to pursue a dream of better healthcare and more flexibility for her family. She believes you can be successful and have it all at home too. This is the ultimate dream, and I am so excited for y'all to hear how Cortney was able to make this happen. Thank you so much for being here today, Cortney.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You have said that you don't think women should have to pick between having a career and spending quality time with their family, while acknowledging that sometimes we do have to create that reality for ourselves. Can you tell us a little bit about how you did this and how it worked for your family?
Yeah, so I was working a job where, I was doing kind of the traditional, not even like 9 to 5. Sometimes I was working until 6 or going to work at 7 so it was really when I started like missing those moments with my kids, both on the front end and the tail end. And even when I wasn't, I was just kind of like tired by the time I got home, and I did not like that. I didn't feel like my kids or my husband were getting the best quality version of me. I really felt like my job was getting that, and I didn't like it. But at the time I thought, that's what it is to be a mom and to work, right? But I just kind of had this nagging feeling that wasn't going to work for me long term. I felt like I was burning out, and I didn't know, like, does that mean I need to do a career change, or like, what does that mean? And I found out during COVID that I really didn't want to be necessarily like a stay-at-home mom, not because I don't want to be the one raising my kids or home with them or whatever it might be, but I just felt like I have a purpose to be a good mom, but I also have a purpose to help people. And so I just felt like pulled away from working like that. And it took years for me to really like build up the courage to just do it and realize that it's kind of like getting married or having kids. Like, there's never really a right time or a perfect time. And so I just kind of had to do it. And it was definitely a leap of faith, but, I do think it's possible, but you do have to shift your expectations a little bit and understand that boundaries have to be put in place, and that goes a long way.
Yeah. I love how you likened it to being like getting married or becoming a mother and having that kind of fear, hesitation in your head of like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not quite there yet. I don't think it's the right time. It's like, it's never going to be perfect. Like, right. Unless you win the lottery, you're never going to end up in this situation where you just have boatloads of money at home, tons to spare, and like you don't have any challenges to work through. What were you doing like when you kind of had this realization that you wanted to make a change?
So it was really after I had my second son. I had to go back when he was, less than 3 months old. And so he still wasn't sleeping through the night, and, trying to figure out what that meant for a feeding schedule. And does that mean he has to go to daycare at such a young age? Like, it was just, I already kind of felt an intense pull with like what that was going to look like on the motherhood side. But then I went back to work, and I realized like what I thought was maybe patient-centered care was still just kind of centered around money. And I didn't like that. I kind of felt like my hands were actually tied about the way that I could treat patients and do what I really thought was in their best interest. And so I think those two things together really just sat very unsettled with me. Like I didn't feel good necessarily about the work that I was doing. I mean, in the day-to-day, yes, right? Connecting with patients and helping them and things like that. But I knew that they were capable of more and that I was capable of helping them with that. And then I knew at home I was capable of being a better mom, a more present mom, a less stressed mom. But it was really hard because I did have a very good paycheck and I carried the healthcare benefits for our family. And it was significantly cheaper for me to carry them than for my husband. So it was all these little things that were also in the back of my mind, right? Saying like, no, like you have it good, stay here. But I had to be like, yeah, I have it good for somebody who doesn't have a family. But for somebody who does have a family, it's not a good fit. Like it's not working anymore.
It changes everything. It really does. Well, and I can relate to so much of that because like you, like I also had it good. And in the day to day when I was like meeting with the people at the office and all of that, like I liked them. I loved, you know, talking to them and just the relationships that I had there and the company that I worked for, like generally it was a good culture. I didn't have it so bad, you know, but I just recognized in myself, like what you were saying, a desire for more and like something different in that season of life.
I also think I started when I had kids, like I didn't have anything to compare it to before, but once I had kids, I started to notice that I felt guilty for using like my PTO for their appointments and things like that. Even though it was like my PTO, I earned it.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'd be like, oh man, like I already took off, you know, like last month for a dentist appointment and now I've got to take off because somebody's sick or, you know, and it was just very, I didn't feel like I could be both. And I just kind of had to realize like I just have a bigger purpose, right? And I just had to figure out like what that meant. And to be fair, entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. Some people would be fine in that like 9 to 5 and they would figure out how to make that work. But I think that if you have that in you, then you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your kids to explore that. And, you know, my husband and I talked about it and we were like, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And I get another job. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like there's jobs. I mean, granted, I know some people have a hard time finding a job, right? But there are jobs. It may not be your dream job, but like I could always go back and do something so that we could, you know, be whole financially as a family. But, you know, it's worth exploring if it means you're at peace with yourself and you feel like your life has a purpose outside of just being a mom, but also outside of just working.
Well, and like you said, feeling that pull and then really like acknowledging that and honoring that and leaning into it rather than just stuffing it and ignoring it and like telling yourself all the reasons why it couldn't be possible for you.
To be fair, I did that for like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, I think we all did.
So I did both.
That's totally fair. I think I maybe did it for like 13 years. I don't know. All of my corporate career. Was there a light bulb moment for you when you knew that you had to make a change or like you finally were like, this is what I'm doing. This is when I'm having this difficult conversation and really being all in about it?
So I actually started to notice I was getting injuries. So like injury on top of injury and like working out has been something that I've enjoyed since I started doing it. And I started to notice even that like felt like a chore, like not a reset, or I didn't feel better afterwards. Like when people say like, you'll never regret a workout or something like that. I was like, no, I do regret it. Because I was already so spent on the energy side of things. So one more thing to give my energy to, and one more thing that wasn't me spending time with my kids. Like it no longer felt like it was serving me the way it was supposed to, but I knew it was something that was healthy and should be serving me. And so it was like little things like that were happening. And then I injured my shoulder. And as a chiropractor, that's really important.
Yeah.
And I just tried to push through it. And then I ended up like burning my hand in like a freak accident. And again, super important body part for a chiropractor. And I just was kind of like, oh man, like, and then I realized it had already taken me out of practice. And so my patients were already not seeing me because they had to make a shift because of, you know, like an emergency situation. And I was like, I think this is it. Like, this is not only like me taking a leap, but honestly, I kind of felt like it was like a God push of like, girlfriend, I have been trying to sit on your heart and you are not listening. So like, girl, you're about to get the boot.
I hear that. Like God throws a pebble and then he throws a rock.
Yeah.
Just kept throwing those
like,
rocks at you.
Yes. So, you know, it was one of those things. I feel like it was just kind of like push came to shove. And I was like, I'm not going to have, it's like, it was a terrible time because of the injuries, but it was also like, this is the best time because I don't have to worry about leaving on a bad note or anything like that. Because that kind of stuff makes me anxious. I'm a very like low conflict, you know, avoid conflict type of person.
I'll just burn my hand instead. It's fine.
Yeah. It's not intentional. But you know, so that helped from that standpoint. But again, we weren't really ready. Like, but it was one of those things. I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And he was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
And so we made the leap and the ducks were not in a row, but we figured it out and here we are.
So tell us about that, how you figured it out and like what were some of the things that you did kind of in that interim period? Because I mean, as much as you're comfortable sharing, of course, but I think the details are the things that can make people like really hung up. And so I always think it's helpful to hear other people's stories of like how they made it work financially.
So I'm not going to lie, on the financial side of things, it was stressful. We tried to tighten the belt as much as we could, but in order for me to grow and work on the business, and it was good for our kids to go to some sort of a structured program, right? So they went to what we call school, but it was a daycare with a curriculum part-time. And then the other part of the time they went with my mom. So that helped us financially from a daycare bill aspect of things. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I mean, there's nothing you can do about like diapers and wipes and, you know, like things like that. So we definitely had some things that it was like, we just are going to have to figure it out. I would do some Instacart and my husband would ref basketball. And so that helped us kind of fill in the gaps a little bit with some flexibility. And then all of my business expenses, I would do not really advise this unless you have a plan to figure it out. But I put it all on credit cards as much as I could. I put on credit cards. And then I couldn't put my rent for my office space on a credit card. So every month I knew that I at least had to make enough to cover the rent for my office space. And so if that didn't come from patient care here, then I knew like, okay, well, your girl's about to do some Instacart after these kids go to bed or while they're napping or whatever it might be. But financially, that was kind of how we made things work there. We did have some savings and we used it. And that was not a comfortable feeling. Like you get that savings account and you don't ever want to use it, right?
Yes,
like you just want it to sit there and look pretty. So, you know, we definitely dug ourselves into a little bit of a hole, but we both did it knowing like this isn't going to last forever and it may not be the choice that would work for everyone. But for us at that time, it was just kind of what we had to do and we made it work. And then as the business started to profit, then I was able to like, I don't have any business debt at this point. So I was able to pay all that back. And then, you know, slowly but surely started to like pay myself. That's also a hard part.
That's amazing. Well, and what was the time period between when you left the job where you kind of had that steady paycheck and when you started your own business and actually had a place that you were paying rent on?
I would have signed my lease 2 months after I left.
Okay. So that's a really fast turn to have like a brick and mortar business, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I tried to do a lot in that time. Like, I spent as much time as I could with my kids, and then I really utilized the time that I was not with them. So if it was a day that they went to school, I was like, they're going to be there all day, and I'm going to be busy all day, but not just like busy work. Like I tried to be very intentional. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I bought like a course that was related to my field so that I could just try to figure out how to make marketing and sales as efficient as possible from the get-go instead of like suffering for a long period of time. So that was something else that I put on a credit card. I didn't have that money sitting around to do it, but I saw it as an investment. And I tried to actually be in the community and make as many like genuine connections as possible. I message people on Instagram, and that stuff is super uncomfortable. I'm an introvert, so it was not a comfy experience, but I knew that that was what was going to make the biggest difference long term, and that was just what was needed to get things off the ground.
Yeah, for sure. And did you have patients that followed you, or were you totally starting from scratch?
So I really tried to not even do any type of an attempt to bring anyone with me. I didn't have any interest in that because I didn't want any bad blood.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I would rather start with zero than to start with some people and then have like a bad relationship in the community. So I did not actively bring anyone with me, but probably within 3 to 6 months of me opening, there were definitely people who reached out to me because they were like, where did you go?
Yes. I feel like that's always the case with like good doctors and chiropractors and just people in general. When they leave someplace and you like them and they've been the person that you've been seeing all along, you do some digging to figure out where they went.
Yes. So those kinds of things happened. But again, they were all more on the organic side. I wasn't like pulling anyone to come with me, which from a financial standpoint wasn't great, but
yeah. Yeah. And what was your husband doing during this time, both for work and then also in support of you and getting this business off the ground?
So he was just working his like regular job, but his job is just a salary position. So it's not like there's really much opportunity outside of their annual potential like raise for him to bring in any more money that way. So he did, like once basketball season started, that's when he was reffing. And he helped a lot on the kids side of things. So if I couldn't be there, if I had to go to something on the weekend, like he picked up the slack, and I don't really feel like he ever, I don't know, made me feel guilty about it or anything like that. Sometimes I did, but that was definitely like self-imposed.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, from that standpoint, I feel like he was pretty helpful. I'm not really a ask for help type, so he didn't necessarily help me a ton on the business side. But he's also like, that's not his thing. So I feel like it just worked out.
Yes, for sure. Well, and I mean, supportive husbands and even doing some of that other stuff, it's so awesome. And I love, honestly, how it's been such a shift with our generation of these more like helpful husbands. I love your passion for just like the way that you live your life. Like I've heard you speak on panels and different things, and you are so convicted in your role as a mother and wanting to be present with your children and just what your day-to-day rhythms look like. Will you talk to us a little bit about that?
I don't know. You know, it's one of those things where I never really understood it until I was a mom, but I really just feel like that is definitely something that I was meant to do. Don't get me wrong. There are times when it's hard. My kids do obnoxious things. But I know that they're just kids, and like, it doesn't, like, I don't want to miss things with them. And my mom didn't miss them with me. And so I know that that has impacted me growing up. It impacted the mom I wanted to be. It impacted my relationship with my mom. And so I knew that I kind of wanted to mimic that as best I could. But I also, my dad was a business owner, like a small business owner for himself. And he was a one-man team. So he didn't have anyone helping him with anything. And I saw a lot, like, he just wasn't present. And, you know, that's the idea I kind of had about starting my own business, was like, man, like, am I going to miss dinner and never put my kid to bed and, you know, like, only have the last hour of the day with my spouse, if that. And he didn't necessarily have great boundaries around like work life. And so that was what was kind of demonstrated for me. And so when I opened, or when I decided to open, I was like, that can't be me. Because the thing was he was gone working to provide, which was amazing, right? But on the flip side of that, I was okay because I had my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I can't be gone all the time because, I mean, my husband is dad, I'm mom, right? And so it's like, there's just that difference. And so I knew that if I wanted to have both, I needed to protect my time with both and be very intentional. And so that's definitely something that I try to do there. And I just want my kids to know too. I mean, I have all boys, so it's not really the same in terms of like raising, you know, a girl into a woman and she can do all these things, but I want them to still know that they can do it and they don't have to sacrifice family time. And if they marry someone who is a small business owner, because maybe they won't be, right? Like, it's not for everybody. But I hope that they would support their partner the way that not only my husband supported me, but, you know, the way that I like needed to be supported.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What are some of your boundaries? And like, I don't know, how do you set boundaries, especially when it comes to other people? Because I know this is a fascinating topic and we've talked about it a little bit in our CEO Moms group, but just like even the language that you use or things like that, working through challenging situations, what advice do you have on setting boundaries and actually upholding them?
So I will say in the beginning, it was not great. I would be like rocking my son to sleep and like texting a patient or someone like for a networking something. And that was not awesome. I realized that what I also didn't want was to be the mom that's there, but like not.
Right.
But in the beginning, again, I feel like some of that was kind of necessary, but I definitely put like a timeline on it. So I was like, okay, this is to build the business, but like, how long am I willing to do work like this? And so that really helped, I think, from that standpoint. Even I would be like in bed and it would be like past the time I normally wanted to go to bed. And I would be like on my phone next to my husband, not talking to him, working on reels. And I'd be like, shh, like, you know, I can't right now. I'm trying to get this edit right or, you know, whatever. And, you know, it was like things like that I had to be like, this is temporary. And once I can get this off my plate, like that's going to be something that I do. So like right now, I just hired an admin and someone to help me with marketing. So like those things, some of it is still in training, right? But like those things are going to be off my plate. And that's really helpful to protect me being able to be present. And then some of that is just, you know, like figuring out what's important to you, because that's going to be different for everybody. But even with my schedule in the beginning, if a patient wanted to come in at 7, I was here at 7. And then if they couldn't come in till 6, I was here at 6. So like, I was like, what am I doing? I'm working more than I was before. But again, I put a timeline on it and now I don't do that. I have a couple days that I'm willing to come in early and a couple days that I'm willing to stay late, but I will never miss my kids in the morning and at night, ever. And I won't let myself miss the majority of either one of those. My oldest is about to go into kindergarten and my schedule is already set through Christmas to allow me to drop him off majority of the days and to pick him up the majority of the days. Like, so it's like little things like that. It just depends on what's important to people. But like, those are things that are important for me. Like, I'm not going to miss a class party. I'm not going to not go on a trip with my husband or not go see my stepsons play football. Like, I'm just not going to miss those things. And I really think that the people you set those boundaries with, which for me are my patients, like, I think they respect you more for it and they realize you're human and they want to do those things for their family too. So I've never received pushback on it. So I think you just got to figure it out.
And it's so freeing to block 24/7 access to you or, you know, all day, every day, like, oh, you can come at this time or this time. And I love your reflection back to just what things were like with your mom, because that's kind of how it was for me too, where like my mom was always the one in the morning, always the one at night, always the one with dinner. And that meant so much to me. And I think sometimes in our culture where like both parents are working, the kids do miss out on a lot of time with mom, and it's sad. And I saw this, I think it was the last month I was working a corporate job where we had, in general, the company that I worked at was very family friendly, very flexible. But there was one meeting in particular that was like a meeting that no one wanted to miss. That happened twice a year and you did not want to miss that meeting. It could mean serious things for you or your team. And it conflicted with almost everybody that had children who were like 5 or 6, their Thanksgiving feast with the families at school, which was the week before Thanksgiving. And so many of the moms that were in like on my team and kind of in the same age range were like missing their kids' little Thanksgiving feast. And it killed me. I wasn't there yet. I think my son was maybe 1 at the time. But just to think about what they were going through and having to make that choice, I was like, I never want to be in that position.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think some of that, I wouldn't say that it's in every family dynamic, but my husband and I literally just talked about it last night, and my kids are in swimming lessons right now. And he was like, I've been and I've seen, I could like not go to any of the rest. And I was like, I want to be at every single one. Like, you know, and so it's like that difference too, that I just think sometimes in jobs there, I mean, they don't mean to not be like sensitive to it, but I just don't think that they are, like, especially if it is a company that is majority male or people who don't have kids, like those things impact, right? Like, I mean, I can't imagine with my own like team ever scheduling something that close to the holidays that was like that important.
I know.
Like ever.
Well, yeah, but to their like fairness too, like if you don't have little kids, you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking
you don't
about
even know.
like, no, oh, there's a Thanksgiving feast like the week before the holidays that I should be considering. No, you're trying to get everything in before the holidays.
Right. But to your point, yeah, like that is just, that's not, like, my heart breaks for those people. And I know sometimes when I go to my kids' stuff and I see that only like a couple moms are there, and I'm like, a lot of times I'm the only mom that's there that like works.
Wow.
And so it's like the other moms, it's like they're either stay-at-home moms and like that's, you know, kind of part of their job that they have, you know, kind of created, or it's moms who like their job was like, no, or they just didn't even want to, you know, go through the hoops of that. So it's tough. The kids get very excited, like, especially when they're little, they're so excited when like parents come, and there is not one kid in either of my kids' classes, and they go part-time, that don't know who I am when I walk in the door. Like, I walk in the door and kids are yelling to my kids, your mom's here, like, you know, and I like that they know who I am.
Yeah.
And it's a daycare. So it's not even like these kids have always been together. Like, you know, kids kind of come and go and, you know, whatever. So I like that aspect of things. I know my kids sometimes get a little territorial because kids that their parent isn't there, they'll be kind of like, oh, like, you know, they want to come and like sit by me and stuff. My kids are like, she came for me.
I know.
So little things like that, that I don't judge anyone, but it just makes me feel that much more passionately that like, I want to be there.
Yes, I totally understand that. I love that you mentioned hiring, because I think for a lot of people when they're considering starting their own business, they think, oh, well, I just don't want to do it all. I don't like admin. I don't like tech. I don't like this. I don't know marketing, you know, whatever it is. And while most people end up doing a lot of the things themselves, at least in the beginning, I think the ultimate goal is to not have to do it all yourself, you know, and to be able to hire. And so I think that's just a really important reminder for people that don't just think about it, you know, the next year, but like, what is the longer game, like your 2, 3, 5-year vision, and how can you be the ideator, but not be the person that's doing all of the grunt work?
I think especially when you start to look at your reasoning, why you want to do something, if it's time, then it doesn't make sense to kind of be the person that has to be in the business in order for the business to run. So for me, we do travel a decent amount, whether that's to go see my stepsons or to travel with our kids, or my husband and I try to take at least little trip a year that's just the two of us. And so that requires me to step away. And in order to do that, I have to have a team, and it's not really easy. It's not easy to let go of some of that stuff. But I also think that whatever you're not very good at, it really sucks. But like holding on to that the longest has made me better, because it made me have to get better at something too, so that when I brought someone on, I could train them. It doesn't mean that they didn't end up being better at it than me, but like I needed to know what it was like to kind of like be in the trenches.
Yeah. And if they're out or something, then you can step in and do it and not feel like you're so dependent on another person.
For sure.
Tell us a little bit about your chiropractic business, Edge Rehab Chiropractic. I know you have a different philosophy than many other chiropractors that are out there, and I always love hearing you talk about how you treat the patients.
Yeah, so I am more of a rehab-based clinic. So appointments are an hour long and they are really customized to that specific patient. So it doesn't matter if that's how the treatment goes or a home plan. It's very specific to where they are now and what their goals are. And so that's going to be different even if they have the same pain area for each person. I do a lot of soft tissue work, so it's a lot of hands-on. And then if we need to do any type of adjusting, then we can do that. And then we go through rehab, and then we get into an intro to strength so that we can actually make long-term results so that they don't have to depend on me for the rest of their life, which is a lot of times a kind of concern or a complaint, I would say, about traditional chiropractic is people feel like once they go, they have to go forever or they keep going for the same thing. And so we really try to find the root cause of the problem and then fix it so that you don't have to feel like that, but you also don't have to depend on someone else.
That's so cool. And how did that philosophy, like, have you always had it, or how did you learn that?
No. So my first job actually coming out of chiropractic school, it was what we consider a straight chiropractor. So just adjusting. And so appointments, were 3 to 5 minutes long per patient. And at first I liked it because I was doing the adjusting and that's what I had learned. But then I realized probably a few months into it that people were coming to me with the same problem every month. I was helping them, but it was definitely temporary, and they did rely on those monthly adjustments or whatever it might be. And so that was not very fulfilling. And so 6 months in, I quit, and I thought I picked the wrong career. And so I started doing personal training. I was like, well, I really love fitness, so let me do that instead for a while and then figure it out. And then I realized that I could blend the two. Yeah. And I started doing that, and I really liked that. I had a job where I was able to do that. But then that's ultimately the job that I ended up walking away from because it just wasn't a good fit, and it wasn't allowing me to kind of help the people that I was best at helping. I just kind of had to be a general chiropractor, and right. I didn't always think that that was the best fit for a patient.
So what types of patients do you focus on now primarily?
I primarily treat active adults. It does tend to end up being active adult women. I would say that women are probably 80 to 90% of my practice, not by my selection, just kind of how things organically go. And then I treat a lot of pain and dysfunction during pregnancy and postpartum.
Okay. And tell us where you're located, and then tell us how people can find a good chiropractor if they're not local to the area.
Yeah, I am in Little Elm, Texas. And as far as if you're looking for someone that is more of like a root cause chiropractor, someone who's going to spend time with you, ideally create like a customized care plan, then I would try to find a rehab-based chiropractor in your area. They are normally going to be looking at the whole body to figure out what's going on, what's involved versus what started the problem, and then give you a customized plan in order to fix that.
Okay. What are your thoughts on nervous system chiropractic care?
I think there's a time and a place for a lot of things, right? I think that it makes sense that if the nervous system is not in a fight or flight type of a situation, that would be beneficial for our health overall. So I think that there's definitely a time and a place for it. I think sometimes it can help with chronic pain if it's gotten to the point where you are just kind of stuck in that fight or flight pattern. And yeah, so I think with everything, there's a time and a place. And I think the most important part is finding, and this isn't just in chiropractic, this is any type of a provider, finding someone who cares about you and your goals and what's truly going on to the point where they will say, yes, this is a good fit for you, or no, it's not a good fit for you. Mm-hmm. Because if you find someone that just takes everyone, I don't vibe well with that, because I do think there are people who aren't a good fit.
Yeah. I also don't vibe well with people that try to create a dependency that like create fear or like this idea that you need to come a certain amount of times forever to maintain your results.
Yeah.
I think in this space, it's like you want to get somebody to true healing and empower them and make them feel like their body can heal and like they can get to a better place and stay there and not be dependent on like one provider or practice or protocol.
For sure. I always tell people that it's a red flag if they don't give you anything to work on your own. Like if they don't give you anything, that's not a good sign. 'Cause just like you said, they're not empowering you with anything. And so it's kind of like, well, what is the plan? When's the end date? If it's someone that never gives you an end date, the body is an amazing, amazing thing. And it is able to heal. And so if someone's not getting you into a place where that healing is happening, then again, you're not getting to the root cause of it. And that's either because they're not the right fit or you don't have the right tools.
Yeah. What are some fears or hesitations that have crept into your journey, either in entrepreneurship or motherhood? And how did you overcome those?
I would say as far as entrepreneurship goes, it would probably be, it's like at first trying to figure out how to make any money. And then once you start making money, you almost get into like a scarcity mindset of you don't want to pay yourself, you don't want to spend it because what if next month is a bad month or next month I want to go on vacation or whatever. And I mean, really, I just had to stop and I had to practice an abundance mindset, not to the point where I'm doing like irresponsible spending, but being like, look, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to expect anything back, but like, I know I'm going to get something back. Same thing with hiring. I just had to do it. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out because now I have people depending on me. And if they do the work, they need to be paid. And so I need to do the work to make sure that I can pay them.
Yeah.
And on the motherhood side of things, I don't know, there's always, I think we compare ourselves to like a perfect parent, right? And I think that image looks different for everyone. And then we start comparing and it doesn't make sense because we're all trying to be a perfect parent that is different in each of our eyes. And so I think that that's something I not only struggle with myself trying to get it right so that my kids aren't messed up or don't have to recover from me as a mom or something, like kind of those big fears. But also understanding like my husband and I have different images of what a perfect parent is. And so like just seeing those differences sometimes in the way we handle things or whatever. And it's not a right versus wrong. It's just two different ways and trying to come together to, make our kids see that we are on a team and it's not like, they can go to one or the other. It's like, no, regardless of who you're coming to us collectively.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And speaking of that, what are you reading right now? I know you're leading a book club and I think maybe this book ties in.
It does. Yeah, I literally think, oh man, I have it here somewhere. Yes. The Queen's Code, that's what I'm reading right now. And so it really does, it talks to like comparing yourself with like the perfect person or comparing your spouse or just other people in general. And it really focuses on like women comparing men to a perfect person. And that's where really our expectations come from. And then it's kind of like we kind of let ourselves down, right? And then we aren't even necessarily meeting the standards of the perfect person. And so then that impacts our confidence. And it's just all this thing that trickles together. And I really, as I started reading it, it's not what I exactly thought it was going to be. I didn't really pay too much attention to the book that was selected. But I do think it's beneficial in even just talking to anyone, right? One of the things that probably 95% of my patients say is that I'm the first provider they've had that just listens. Mm-hmm. And they feel like when they go anywhere else, they're rushed. And, this book speaks to that. Like, if you ask someone a question and they don't answer immediately, like, just give them time. They might be processing it or trying to figure out what to say, how to say it. And you don't have to fill those like silence moments. Mm-hmm. And so like, I feel like that is, good in any career really, even when you're networking or you're marketing, like sometimes it might feel uncomfortable to you, but the other person might just be trying to collect their thoughts. And
Right.
so yeah, it's been a pretty interesting book.
Awesome. And what has surprised you most about having your own business? I like to ask this because I know in the beginning when we're starting out, we have these lofty expectations and visions, and sometimes it plays out that way. Sometimes there's some bumps along the way, but what has surprised you, either the good or the difficult?
I would say on the difficult side of things, I think I was surprised at how long it takes organic relationships to turn into profitable business. And it made me kind of understand why some people like don't start with that. But I think that it's the best place to start because long term, it's what pays off. And it makes now my job much easier than it was in the beginning because I have these relationships. I also think the amount of like overhead that can go into things. Like I wasn't thinking about how hard it was to do a website, or like, you know, if I have an office and I need electricity and I need Wi-Fi and, you know, just like all these things, business insurance, like things like that, that I think you kind of have an idea, but until you get into it, you're like, holy cow, like there's a lot of things that I am responsible to pay every month.
Yeah.
You know, so those things I think were a little daunting, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
well, and I think in a way it's probably good that you didn't have that laid out for you on the beginning, because it might have, I mean, for anyone would maybe scare you into not making the leap and really holding the vision.
yes, I definitely agree. But I also think, you know, there's nothing wrong with like knowing what all those things are. But again, I think that at some point you just have to take a leap of faith and you have to tell yourself like, this is going to work. And worst case scenario is it doesn't. And you'll figure it out. Like, you know, we figure all sorts of things out. People get laid off from their job all the time and they figure it out. So I think just holding on to the fact that you'll figure it out. You know, I mean, that's really what we do from the time we're little, right? Like we figure out how to sit and crawl and walk, and like we're meant to figure it out.
Yeah, that's so funny. I can hear my mom saying that to me when I was little. Probably when we were like fighting, my sister and I, and it was like, figure it out.
Yeah. Sometimes my boys will be like going at each other and my husband will be like, okay, mommy's just letting them. And I'm like, look, man, like I'm not always going to be there to like, you know, so figure it out.
Got to figure it out. You mentioned posting reels. What type of content do you post and share on social media?
So I try to do a variety. So I try to do some that is just educational. I think there are a lot of times that people have been, unfortunately, kind of like pushed into this like fear side of healthcare, where if your back hurts, you think, oh man, like now my back's out, or I'm going to have back pain forever, or whatever it might be. Women think that they have to leak forever because they had a baby, like things like that, that just aren't true. And maybe at one point that was the best knowledge that we have, and that's why it's so widespread. But, you know, I really just try to make sure that people understand what their body is capable of, that you should never avoid things like squats or deadlifts because they're literally part of life. And so I try to do educational. I try to do some self-assessments that people can do at home so that they can figure out, like, do I even need care, right? Or does my pain make sense? And can I fix it on my own? Because some people can. Probably 70% of people, if they're just consistent, they can do it on their own. So I try to give people tools, and then I try to lighten it up with some just like silly trending things.
Yes. How can people find you?
I am on Instagram. That's where I'm probably the most active. And it is Edge Rehab Chiropractic.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a joy to talk to you. And I just love, I mean, I'm sure you're so motivating, especially to people that are thinking of starting the brick and mortar business, because it's a big thing. It's a big thing to start any business. But like you said, especially when you have rent and you have some of those other things to figure out. But you did it. Like you said, you didn't even really have a plan. You weren't like super prepared, and you figured out a way to make it work. So props to you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. And podcasts that, like, even things like this, like, that stuff is so helpful. So anybody who's like not sure, find podcasts that you can apply to whatever you're doing and just binge those. Like,
right.
You can find so much good information in someone who's been there before you. And if you find someone, especially if, you even just see somebody in your community that you think looks like they're doing well, like, reach out to those people. Like, people like to help. Like,
yes.
True entrepreneurs want to see other entrepreneurs like succeed. So
That's so true.
They will help you.
That's so true. And there's so much free advice out there. There's podcasts that are 2 and 3 hours long, and free master classes, and a free 3-day training thing that like I can recall attending recently. And there's so much that you can get for free if you really are willing to like dig in and kind of sort through the content and figure out who speaks to you.
For sure. But it's also worth investing in yourself and having some sort of coach.
Yes. And it's funny. I think the last 3 podcast episodes I've recorded, everyone has said that they invested in a course or a container where they were in a community of other women that were trying to do something similar.
Yeah. I think it's really important because, again, like, my husband's not an entrepreneur. So like, he doesn't get it. Like, I was talking about, with my marketing person, like telling them like how to figure out when to post and things like that. And he was like, I could never do this. And I'm like, all I'm talking about are like metrics. Like, I'm not even going into anything, and he was just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I think finding a group that you can be around, it definitely, starting with free stuff is never a bad way to go. But I definitely think like getting to that next level, it is nice to have someone that you invest in because it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah. Well, and to your point about figuring it out, like, you do have to figure it out, but you don't have to figure it out alone. And especially in this day and age, just with all the information, there's so much to pull from and so much that you can tap into. Like you said, free or paid. I mean, eventually the paid stuff, of course, is better and has more value inside of it.
Well, and you want to skip the mistakes you don't have to make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I felt like I got. When I paid for things, it's not like I got things that I couldn't have gotten for free, but I got them quicker and concise and applicable. So it was like, I was able to skip, a lot of mistakes that I feel like I would have made on my own, or even if they weren't mistakes, just things I didn't know to do, I was able to do them from the get-go. And I really think that contributed to me being able to turn a profit as quickly as possible.
That's so true, because that stuff is often packaged in a way that's like meant to help you transform very quickly from point A to point B, and to take the fast route and not take kind of the windy like road where you have a bunch of guessing and getting stuck in your head.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Cortney. It was so great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you.